True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. As promised, 8:30 shows, Monday through Sunday. So we're going to be breaking down different cases, but specifically right now we're focused on Nancy Guthrie. I really wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, the infighting that's been reported by so many in this case. That is a big issue, but I want to really talk about what that means behind the scenes. We're getting reporting, of course, from Brian Hinton and from many others, actually, regarding this problem between the FBI and local authorities. I want to make sure that I have my comments on here. Let's see. Okay, I think I do have them on. Okay, great. Here we go. Let's bring Karen up really quick. So in any event, there's been a lot of reporting about these issues. A lot of concern that the FBI wasn't brought in, a lot of concern about things being mishandled from a Pima County Sheriff's Department that just has little experience. We've seen this in so many cases, not only the Idaho 4, the biggest case I saw it in was actually Delphi. And I want to really do a deep dive on how mishandled Delphi was from beginning to end. And I know a lot of people believe, I think just based on that casing, which I think is just a fallacy, that Richard Allen is guilty. I really need to do a show on it because I know from insider information, and when I say that, I'm actually trying to get the source on because you know how I feel about sources. Obviously, this source is great. He was there. He was with the department. He's the one that reported early on to me, really for about probably 2 years, all the issues with that case because he saw it. There are so many things he said. Hopefully I can get him to come on the show, at least even if it's just verbally and in the background. I want him on because I think it's very important for people to understand in that case what happened to Richard Allen and what happened to that case. And the reason I touch on that, and I'm just going to touch on it, I won't digress totally, is because when you look at this case, you see a lot of problems in the beginning. Now, Sheriff Nano said that crime scene was there 20 hours. That's what he said. I have it recorded. 20 hours is what he was reporting. But there's other reports that say 2 hours. 2 hours, you don't even have time to do your sketches and your photographs and mark your rooms. There's a whole process when you go in. You always do sketches because photographs don't give you distance, height, the different links you're looking for, the distances between objects. So when you do a sketch, you actually do it to scale and you mark very specifically the exact dimensions of a particular room, of a door, the height of a door. Everything is perfectly sketched. And you literally, when you start your crime scene, you have somebody just sketching. Now, that person should have booties on so they don't leave any of the dust from their house, any dog hair that they might have on their shoes. They should go in completely sterile. And then secondarily, and not touch anything. And then, of course, you have the photographs. The photographic evidence is so critical because a sketch can't catch what a photo can catch. But these are the first 2 stages of going in. We know now so much from Savannah Guthrie. We know it was a hot mess. Nobody treated this as any sort of homicide, any sort of abduction. They treated this as, oh, we've got a missing senior. She's probably wandered off and everybody's making a big deal about this. And that's a big, big problem in this case because it wasn't handled correctly. We know Savannah said that night, I believe she says that night she gets in And when she's there, everybody is there stirring around all over the place. So we know that that crime scene is from the get-go a absolute hot mess. In fact, worse than I ever thought. I know Cheryl McCollum's come on and we mimic the same thing. You have a separate route to walk in. The only people allowed in there are your case agent, your detective, and the people that are handling the crime scene, that are actually processing it, because they know the measures that need to be taken, that you can't disturb anything. I literally shudder to think of all the people that picked up something and said, "Oh, that's cool," or saw a piece of trash, threw it away, or tripped over something, made it out of sorts, went into her room and pulled the bed covers back, mess tampered with that bed that she was snatched out of, looked around, picked things up, went into the kitchen, brought all of themselves in there. When I say all of themselves, that means everything. That means, I talked about this before, their dog hair. That means their clothing fibers. That means the dirt that they step in, that they track through a house. Every part of them is in there. Every part of Savannah, Cameron, Annie, Tommaso, they were all in there. And remember, Annie and Tommaso were in there early. So they really left a lot of themselves in that house. And if it's true, which now I'm reading, and I really need to get the source reporting of this, that if they were only there 2.5 hours, and again, I I need to dive deep. I need to dive deep, but I think that's what some people are reporting. People within the department, again, are very angry at Nanos. He's lost their confidence and they are rebelling in full stage. I think what this is with Nanos is you had a department that already didn't like him, that people felt like they would be punished if they just didn't like a decision being made. They would be put behind a desk phone as the most experienced sergeant in the department instead of out on the streets with his detectives working cases. That's a real mess. Whenever you are in a supervisory role, and many of you have supervisory roles, you have to sort of push your personal feelings aside. You really do. You have to just be fair. Can't be personal. You can't do it. And so I think because of that, he kind of has one of those reputations, from what I'm gleaming, as a vindictive supervisor, a supervisor that will literally do things out of being vindictive just because they don't like you. So anyway, nevertheless, and then it seems like the Nancy Guthrie case and all the missteps there, it just was able for them to sort of bring this to light and say, look, the whole world's looking at the release of the crime scene. The whole world is looking at your inability, seemingly, to understand when things happen. Was it Saturday night? Was it Sunday night? It was neither of those. And beyond that, the 11th that is spoken of. 1 minute it's no, it's not. Blah, 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 blah. So nevertheless, it seems like this case was able to bring to the forefront those issues. But let's talk about this. What does all this mean if it's true that there are big issues between the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Office? Well, we don't know about that for sure. But to me, part of this, when it keeps getting discussed and discussed, so I'm not going to discuss it in huge length, it's spilled milk. As my daddy once said, the horse done left the barn, Jen. Actually, he called me Jenny. Horse done left the barn. the milk has been spilled. The facts are the crime scene was botched in terms of allowing all those people in, milling all around. The crime scene was botched again, at least to some degree. They didn't even take the mat. They didn't take the flowers. Remember the slobber on that light? Let me get me off the screen. Been on here way too long. Sorry, I normally get some good photos up. Actually, I promised I would put that one up, but I'm going to talk about that one later. He ends up putting a light in his mouth that everybody has seen, and that causes a lot of slobber. We've talked a lot about that. It causes slobber when you put your hand up to insert it, and then certainly after it's been in there long enough to, now we know he didn't have tools to take off this light. He forcefully removed it. We know that now from Savannah. I tell you, this conversation that Savannah had with Hoda, we've gone through it, but it just is an absolute plethora, I like that word, plethora of knowledge regarding the crime scene and regarding this crime. And again, now we know how absolutely corrupted the crime scene was before Pima County even started their crime scene analysis. And she talks about in there, of course, these doors being propped open. I want to show those. So we know there's one right here that she could be referring to on the back there. This is the day, this footage is from the day the FBI went back again to remove the camera. You see the camera up on top of the roof? Right up here. And I'll tell you who just put that. Was that Legendary? I'm going to bring this up. Here we go. There's 3 interviews for those who do not know this. I'll quickly digress here. If you have not watched them, please watch them. I have them on my Twitter to make it super easy, where you just go in and press the button and they play for you. Don't have to go on YouTube and wait for commercials or anything like that. They'll just pop up for you. If you're on Twitter, I'm at, or X now, they call it, at Coffin Daffer FBI, just to make it easy. And I put those up before I even talked about them. And then I have pinned sort of some of the major points that were made. And then also, if you prefer to sort of listen to it on YouTube or on any of the channels, I would recommend, if you don't mind, if you could go back, I think 2 days at noon. It's the only one I've done at noon. If you could go back at noon and take a look at that, because the noon actually will outline every single thing that was said and why, from an investigative lens, that's important. So it's the noon, Break the Case with Jen Coffin Daffer. And I think maybe the thumbnail has this picture on it, I believe. And the highlight says, "Could it be my fault?" Because throughout some of her Savannah is just beating herself up that it's her fault because of her celebrity. And, you know, I hope she gets a counselor to work with her that explains to her this isn't her fault. She had nothing to do with it. This is the fault of Porch Guy and perhaps others. That's whose fault. It's whose fault all that is, not hers. She blames herself, and she goes into a real, not tirade or rant, but a very saddened display, and really just beating herself up. It's really horrible to watch. Thank you. I want to say this right. Adorna Design. What a beautiful name, Adorna. I wonder if that's the name of your company or if that's your given name. It's a beautiful name. I've never seen that name before. Nevertheless, but she gives us a lot of clues. And one of the things she says from an investigator's lens, again, not talking about not talking about the emotional side of things. She talks about these doors being propped open. And I showed these doors, and I'm very confused whether she meant, is this considered more than one door? You know, is this just one door? Looks like one door to me. But then she says the door, she uses a plural. She uses a plural, so I don't know whether that's just an error or whether she meant it to be doors. If so, I did find this other picture, and in this you can possibly see, you see that door? It seems like there's a door swung open there. And that looks kind of propped open to me. If that is the other door. So in any event, she says doors are open, and that's really critical. Why? Do I think that they took Nancy out this way, took her all around her house for possible other cameras to catch? This is a huge house, meaning how it's laid out. It's not a two-story, it's a ranch style house, and there's a pool area, there's a cabana house. It's kind of elongated. And to do that would be such a huge tactical blunder. I don't think that that was what they did. Also, we know that there was blood on the front porch, and we know they released this. It was Nancy's blood. I really believe that the perpetrators had a car over. I don't think that car would have been parked out in front of there for almost, 40, 50, 60 minutes. I just don't think that. I think that the car would have been called over at the time they were going to take Nancy, pulled up, and this would have been after porch guy removed the camera, yanked it, didn't remove it, he yanked it, ripped it, were Savannah Guthrie's words. And we know that now. That's another big clue to me. They didn't come prepared, to have wire cutters and to remove the screws, as many of us thought could be the case. No, he yanked it off. And I don't think those weeds were used to yank anything. I really think this guy, although he's been able to get away with it so far, he's a blunderer that blundered into doing a lot of things right. Unorthodox, but right. And just pulling that camera was very smart. Not just covering it up, but pulling it out. So smart. I think they pulled the car over and took her out the front. So you asked, Jen, well, why were these doors propped open? And Savannah Guthrie specifically points this out, that they were propped open. And I would say that is to allow for others to enter with whatever they might have in their hands. Not to touch anything. It's to allow them to enter. Boom, boom, go in and out. She says doors, though. I don't know what the reasoning would be for both doors to be left open. But apparently they were propped open. Can't forget either that when you're in the middle of these things, and I always call to mind, please, if you can, even though it's completely fiction, watch the movie Pulp Fiction. Because I have to tell you, when it comes to these sorts of things, after interviewing hundreds and hundreds of criminals that have committed violent crimes, they get in and they kind of go with it. I think maybe an analogy I could make is if you and some friends decided to go to that, there's a new thing. I haven't gone to it, but you go in and it's called something like Breakout, something like that. And it's where you actually go in and they lock you inside and you have to work as a team trying to figure things out. If these folks had never been in this house, if they only had information about the house but had never been in the house, you can imagine them trying to work through what they're going to do. And by the way, I really do think they did that pretty quickly. And so they work through what they're going to do. And maybe originally they thought about taking her out the back. And so they propped open those doors. And then somebody said, no, 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 no. That's so stupid. We're not going to walk her all around. Remember, she was 150 pounds, everyone. I tried to show, I actually did a video on this. People thought it was funny, but this is what we do. We do it in the Bureau. You want to see if a scenario you have in mind can work. I did it related to the David Celeste Rivas case because people were trying to say she wasn't dismembered in the trunk, that she had just fallen apart, and that, it could be just one person. And I was trying to dispel the sort of ludicrousy of that. It's so difficult. I'm about 110 pounds. My husband's about 175 pounds, 5'10", works out every day. I'm not saying he's like some incredible Hulk and is like really super strong. I'm just trying to say he's not like David, D4 V8, who's barely, 5'2"-ish and who weighs a buck nothing. Celeste Rivas is my exact size. Her height, her weight, everything. And my husband would put me in a trash bag, and it's almost impossible to pick that up. And he tried to put me in our front trunk of our Tesla. No way. There's no way to fit. And sure enough, it was confirmed from the autopsy when it was released a couple of weeks ago that she was in fact dismembered. Her arms and legs were removed from the torso, put in a separate bag that was below the torso and the head of Celeste, and that was put into this trunk. And I guarantee he had help. Who that ends up being, whether it was even more than one, we don't know yet. They're getting to the bottom of that. That's just such a heinous, complicated, devil worship, satanic, sick case, I think. I mean, I think it might not be as simple. I mean, I think it was planned. They had that like carcass burner that they never ended up using, but that case is another sick one. Really some evil people out there. I hope they get him. I think they will. They got to do it right. But nevertheless, not to digress too much, but if more than one person was there, and even if one person was there and decided, oh, I need to prop the door open, I'm going to try them through this door, that's not working, I'm going to go through this door, that's not working, there should be blood drops to show all of that. Going, attempting, changing their mind, bringing her to the front door, opening it and going out that way. All of that, but I worry, all those people were in there. Could they be smudging the droplets? I mean, it's just get one chance at a crime scene. One chance. No other chances. None. No other chances. So, having said that, I still think the door propped open was to open for others with the possibility of a changed plan of how they were going to bring her out when they really thought about it. But that changed plan would have had to happen fairly early because they had porch guy out there ripping out the light or ripping out the lens. Why would they do that if their original plan wasn't to take her out the front door? Because there'd be no reason to go to the front door. We know the front door wasn't breached. We know he tries it. He's on video trying the knob. Can't get in. I really think they entered through the back door. I've said that from the beginning. Remember, there's a locksmith. We also saw, picked up from likely this camera. We know it was her camera. Likely this camera. We know that there was a figure that they couldn't make much out of. Seen at 2:12, everyone. She connected from her Apple Watch at 2:28. That timing works out pretty darn perfect. If they're ripping out that Nest camera, right? They're ripping that all out. They get that done. Already somebody's in the back whisking her out of the bed, holds that door open, carries her right over, whether it's fireman style, which could have been, could be this style, could have been two people, we don't know. But those blood droplets end at the gravel, everyone. They end at the gravel. Do they begin at the bed and go straight to the front door? Was there any diversion to those back doors? Did they do a good crime scene? And in this environment where you have such a dry environment, likely dust and other particles could be picked up. Did any of the bad guys step in any of the blood? Not the blood we see out on the porch, because it doesn't look like it's been disrupted, but the blood in the back, or I mean in the house that could be there. Remember the Brian Koberger case where he stood outside of Dylan Mortensen's room? Only you couldn't see it. It wasn't a visual one. They had to use an amino acid technique to show the blood footprint, because he had stepped in blood. Now you might be saying, well, Jen, that's a little bit different. I mean, they had so much blood everywhere because of how they were massacred. So there would be huge pools of blood that you could step in your feet, would actually make a full impression. All we know is what we can see from that porch, and I agree with you, that's a slight bit of blood. And if they really whisk her out quickly, and again, on blood thinners, I don't have the picture up, and I don't want to scroll and grab it because I guess it's making a lot of noise when I go and bring other library photos in. But her arms, the skin on her arms, and anybody who has my papa has a pacemaker, and he takes blood thinners, and his arms and hands are like crepe paper. He bleeds constantly. You can look at him and he bleeds funny. You can hug him too hard. You can grab a little, and that skin just breaks. He doesn't even know it either. It's so funny. I'm like, Papa, you're bleeding. So it happens quickly, and you can just imagine the amount of blood that if you grab this poor woman, Nancy, grab her, the violence of all of that. The ease at which her skin is broken, it's not like yours and mine. There's no comparison. It's like crepe paper. So there could have been more copious amounts in the house. It's possible, I don't know. But nevertheless, there could have been a situation where he stepped in, and even if you step in a droplet, it spreads. If he held her like I think he did on the front porch, I know it seems to be about half and half. Most of the homicide investigators agree with me, and a lot of the other folks don't. Some of the crime scene people and so on, I've always said we'll never know until the lab tells us. But I'm particularly talking, I'd love to bring this picture up, but again, I hate to go into my library if it's distracting with the noise. But there's a splotch of blood. When I say splot, more of a circle, and I believe she was held there to pull back on the door. And that's why there's just more droplets that come out. And I've showed the picture of just a droplet, what happens. When a droplet goes, it makes these micro dots in and around it. People think that she sneezed or coughed. I think she would have been gagged. I'm sorry if this was asked, but do you think that the arrest of the PC, oh, you know what? We're going to do that. I have that for the second part. We are going to talk about that full on. So thank you so much, Sophie. I appreciate that sweet, the chat here. And Karen, thank you so much too. There's a garage door code keypad on the exterior. I saw FBI agents use it to close the door. You know, that's interesting that you say that, Karen. We know that a locksmith went in and did some work in the back. I have the pictures of him back there and ran the plate. We know it's a locksmith. that was actually messing with this door, as I recall, and definitely the slider door. So to your point, that is interesting. If there was a keypad, those are not hard to overcome, but they take a little time. It's just so terrible that we don't have any footage from back here to really know who propped open those doors. Obviously, it's going to be the bad guy or guys. And to me, it's just to easily gain entry. If she has these doors, like my door does, when you open it, it auto closes back. And if they're really conscientious about, even with gloved hand, not wanting to touch and open, and, it makes sense to me to keep the doors propped open. And if you had any thought at all about maybe taking her through there, and then you said, no, that's stupid, we're going to go out through front, shortest route to a getaway car, that makes a lot of sense too. But nevertheless, that big clue about being propped open, it just tells me I think more than one person was involved, everyone. I mean, I've been saying that because I really believe that porch guy was out here doing this while other guys were in the back getting in. How long was he in the house? We've talked a lot about this. A lot of people believed, and I actually early on believed, it was very possible he was in there for an extended amount of time, even more than what people discussed, that was a possibility, because we don't know when he entered, when people might have entered from the back. We just don't know when people might have entered. And because of that, that timeline is all messed up. But what we do know is that 212, somebody's lurking around the back. That timing works out pretty good with porch guy being up there, yanking that and going around, or somebody else going around. And actually them not being in very long. It's all to say, no one knows, because I could pose 5 different scenarios. Porch guy yanking that, walking around, being seen at 212, breaching the back, going in the back, grabbing her out of her bed, taking her out the front into the getaway car, gone. That's the single porch guy scenario. Well, not single, because I still think there would have been somebody in the car. Really don't think anyone parked this vehicle in front of her house for this hugely extended amount of time, over 41 minutes. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. These types of crimes, from all my experience and from the experience of any homicide, robbery, anybody who's been involved in a kidnapping, the taking of another person, with a scenario like this, a break-in, an abduction, there's more than one person involved. So minimally for me, 2 people, somebody to pull that car around, them to throw her in the trunk. I do believe she would have been gagged and hooded. But, and I think that's what was in his backpack, but I am not completely throwing out the possibility that she was just whisked out right then because they full knew they were going to kill her. You don't have to worry about her saying anything, in other words, seeing the car, seeing the destination. If you're going to kill her, you don't have to worry about some of these things. But let me tell you why I don't think that happened, why I do think she was gagged, and why I do think she was hooded. I really believe initially this could have been a kidnapping with the intent of ransom, and she died. Pretty much said that from the beginning. But I want to talk about one thing that is sort of bringing me back to what Cheryl McCollum and I have talked about, and that is much more heinous than that. In other words, grab her, take her. And the reason I think she was gagged too is because you would not want to be driving around with somebody in the trunk that is capable of screaming. And you wouldn't want to rely on just knocking her out, hitting her, blunt force trauma to prevent all that. To me, they would have grabbed her. And again, another reason why I think another person was involved, gagged her, hood out. And I think that would have happened really quickly. I don't think anything nefarious happened in the house because I really think that timing we've had has been off. Just trying to subtract when the door cam was ripped off to when her watch disconnected. I think that timing is off. So nevertheless, you have her out in the car. And this is the thing that during the interview that Savannah Guthrie has with Hoda that is said that really is concerning. And she says she thinks, and remember, why would she think this? She thinks this because what law enforcement would be saying around her, what her victim witness specialist is liaisoning, what the note would have said, the notes would have said. She thinks they're real. People have been talking about, I don't know if you've seen it, it's all over now, that the notes were an apology. Remember, a lot of people have seen these notes, by the way. TMZ has seen them. Their staff has seen them. There was an officer from Pima County who talked about it. The Bureau, a lot of people have seen these notes. A lot of people. And they've been putting out there that there was an apology in the note. I'll tell you why that rings true a bit for me. It rings true for me because of and maybe I need to do I did a whole show on all 5 public pleas from Savannah and her family, breaking those down and what they meant and what the words meant and where the words were from and why would they be doing that in the way they did, because it was very unusual. If there was an apology in the note, they thought that there would be somebody that has some empathy that would be on the other side of the note. That's why. That's why you would be saying things like, it's not too late. Everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone makes mistakes. I think they even wrote that in one of the pleas that was said. Everyone makes mistakes, Savannah said. Did a whole show on this. Using the silence of the lambs. Talk to her and you'll see. If you really dissect the words that this family said, they said it, other than when Cameron came on and said, listen, reach out to us. Let us know where we can contact you. Contact us. We want to pay, but we need to see our mother and we need to see it. Other than that, that was a very serious, very short, that was message 2. Other than that, everything was very soft. Let us put her to rest. So when you think about all of that, and now this new reporting, again, it's source reporting, but still, there's always usually a breath, a little bit of truth whenever you see something like that. When you look at this source reporting, it just makes me wonder if there's some validity in there. We know there's a quid pro quo that they said likely they were going to kill her if they didn't have the 6 million Bitcoin. I believe that's what they wanted, was 6 million Bitcoin, which, by the way, is not $6 million. I did these calculations before. It's unbelievable. Just 1 minute. I'm going to do them again. It's big. Yeah, that's what I thought. 6 million Bitcoin is $66 million. So obviously, Savannah Guthrie is only worth 40 million. And no matter what, even if somebody is worth 40 million, their money is tied up in stocks and bonds and investments and real estate, is not tied up. She doesn't have 35 million sitting under her mattress or in a bank account. The FDIC only even insures 250,000. So no one with money has more than that in any account, typically. So this was a pie in the sky, and why all of us said that particular ransom was not legitimate, meaning they offered no proof of life. They went to the media. And so I think we have to really rethink. We have to really rethink and go back to, this is going to crack me up if it goes back to what I said at the very beginning, my very first thought. Kidnapping for pain and suffering of the Guthries. Ransom notes for pain and suffering of the Guthries. In other words, did they ever care about money? Occam's razor said, yeah, they wanted money. But when you look at how this played out, did she die on accident and it went horribly wrong? Or they knew they planned it to go horribly wrong? Not wrong, it went right for them. They planned on murdering her. It's interesting, that's what Philip Dubé says. Philip Dubé says they went in with a knife and killed her right there. We don't have any evidence of that. You would think that that would have been brutally honest or brutally obvious. In fact, you would think that Cameron and everybody, another thing that came out in this interview was that they knew right away it was a kidnapping. If I saw copious amounts of blood from stabbing, I would not think this was a kidnapping. I would think it was a murder and they took the body. So I'm not 100% on board with Philip with the stabbing. And again, he was a defense attorney for decades and a prosecutor. So he's seen a lot, and it was in Los Angeles, not Pima County. In Los Angeles, you see, this is, daily occurrences of violence anyway. So that was kind of his first thought. I don't think it was that, because I think they would have said, not that they knew they had foul play on their hands. They knew from the blood droplets. But I think they would have said they likely have a murder on their hands, not a kidnapping. And Savannah's very specific. She specifically says a kidnapping. That was the pervasive belief, and that Cameron, who's military, that's what he thought too. And that was, they knew what they had on their hands. And if we're to believe Sheriff Nanos, he comes back and he says that numerous times too. He says, listen, we knew what it was from the beginning, and that's what we still think it is. But now, this is my point. Now, for the first time, I think we have some confirmation that at least 2 of those ransom notes were real, meaning connected to this. That, to me, was the biggest epiphany, and she gave us a lot of epiphanies. That was the biggest epiphany we had. They are real? You mean they're connected to this crime? Now you're just looking at somebody torturing this family. Absolutely torturing this family. Taking her, murdering her, then 3 days later, sending notes to further torture. Or I don't know, I'm so sorry. 3 days later was when the Bureau got involved. The notes came a little bit earlier, so apologies. I'll get the exact day of those notes. And then remember the second note that also came that she's referring to. Those notes weren't to get money. Nobody can put up that kind of money. And you especially don't do it with no proof of life, everyone. So I know a lot of people have said, well, if it was murder for ransom, or kidnapping for ransom the whole time, why didn't they pay it? Why didn't they pay, 6 million Bitcoin? I think it's because people maybe don't know that 6 million Bitcoin is 66, at least today, it fluctuates, $66 million. And they sent that to be on blast in the media. They sent it to Tulsa or to Tucson stations, everyone, two Tucson stations. They kept it quiet. 12 hours later, that note, the original note, went to TMZ, knowing, I think they did that knowing that TMZ was, of course, going to come and talk about it. That was a huge story. They're not going to miss the opportunity. Plus, they reach, I think they have just like 8 million or something like that just on one platform. They have multi-millions of people that watch and listen to TMZ. They have people that pay money for stories. They're the first on the scenes. They're the first to get a lot of video footage. I always pay attention to TMZ because I'm telling you, they're on it when it comes to, especially if it happens in Los Angeles or concerning celebrities, something like that. They are on it. They are on these stories. They're boots on the ground. They got photographers. I think they have a budget where they can, get people to come talk to them. Hey, listen, I know we're TMZ. You might not want to come talk to me, but we can pay you $250 if you're willing to take just a little time out of your day or whatever. I don't know that to be a fact, but I would believe that they have a very nice budget. The Bureau, we had a budget for doing things just like that. Come talk to me. Again, back to money being the motivator. But with this revelation that these ransom notes are connected, everyone, we have to rethink the case. You have to rethink the case now. You let the facts guide. So initially said, abducted for money, horribly bad when she died, abort the mission, done. But now when you add in that the two notes are real, meaning connected to the abduction, you have to go back to square one when we didn't know about the notes, or we didn't know for sure about that, but we said, if they're connected, then you are talking about somebody that wants to terrorize, someone that hates this family, someone from Tucson, somebody that knows exactly who Savannah and Nancy were, somebody who specifically targeted them out of their hatred, retribution, revenge type nature. And it wasn't enough to just take Nancy and kill her. That wasn't enough, everyone. Later, then you have to go back and you have to torture them with notes about, if you don't send us this money, then we're going to kill her. Because I guarantee that was the if then, because right after that, they knew they had that deadline. The brother comes out and says, listen, contact us, the family. Give us proof of life. We want to pay. They never come through with that. And then basically, next note is she's dead. And it sounds like there might be an apology on there. So personal. So personal if that's the case. Seemingly so personal. I talked about, statistically speaking, what bothers me is that Scottsdale case, because this blows the whole thing off the board. The day before, two people never knew each other, get involved with breaking into a house, getting uniforms, having $1,000 seed money, an hour and a half north of Nancy, again, going to not elderly people, but people in their 60s, people who were rich, beautiful neighborhood, break in and try to extort them out of 66 in cryptocurrency, 66 million in cryptocurrency. So that would really be one Bitcoin. Guys, does anybody else? I mean, I've been talking about this. Every officer, every homicide detective I cut this up with, every FBI agent is blown away from that. And then these two people that were pulling the strings, this Red and this other guy pulling the strings on that, That's brutal what they did. The fact that it's 66 million in crypto, which is crazy. That's what it said, $66 million in cryptocurrency. It's weird that the sixes are all coming together. 666. I don't know. It's just the whole thing. That I know that this seems so personal, and it does. But whoever was behind the one in Scottsdale, unless they've broken it, which I haven't heard that they figured out who Red and 8 were that were communicating on the Signal app, which you would think you'd be able to trace the $1,000 seed money that was sent to these two that traveled 6.5 hours to commit this crime. That, again, never even knew each other, but came together to break into a house to extort 66 million. An hour and a half north, one day before Nancy was taken. There's just a lot of freaking similarities. It just are. You just can't blow it off. I hope the Bureau's looking into it. I really do. Because whoever did that crime, Red and 8 that were in the back, whoever did that crime, they're evil. Because those two kids, and I would love to see, because I bet this is dark web stuff, I would love to see the original chat. Because to me, they found two people that were willing and wanted to. There's a lot of sadistic people out there that just want a chance. Because these people, when they broke in, they tied them up and they beat them, everyone. And when they said they couldn't give again, they beat them a little bit more. We don't know how bad, but these were some sadistic people. Obviously, they didn't die, so it wasn't that bad. But just the fact that you would want to tie somebody up and beat them, break into these people's homes, these strangers, for 66 in crypto. Sadistic. Now, those two were 17 and 16-year-olds. They were idiots. They didn't do anything right. They did it in the day. They didn't do it in the night. But who was pulling their strings? Is there literally something on the dark web right now where somebody's trying to lure already sadistic-minded people to do crimes like this? Just have to consider it. I'm not saying it's the case. I'm saying if I'm an FBI agent, I'm on it. I'm going to run that down. Was it 2 or 3 shows ago? I said, "What the hell?" This was before this all came out. What the hell happened to the notes? What happened to people? The FBI is on that. The FBI, no matter what, that's a crime, and they haven't solved it. They have not solved that crime. They have not arrested the people behind the notes. So I guarantee you, if those 2 notes are involved, like Savannah says, that everybody keeps wondering what the number one lead in. That's the number one way to break this case right now. That's it right there. Those notes. Porch Guy is big too, but without his name on flyers and on billboards, and without his name or his face, not his name, his face everywhere. I mean, look, in all this publicity now that has been regenerated on the case, which is critical to keeping the case alive. I never saw Porch Guy once. No one's showing the key to the case. They're showing beautiful Savannah's image, her face. They're showing Nancy's face. I see it all over. Nobody's showing Porch Guy's face. It's just mind-boggling to me as a 28-year investigator. It's just mind-boggling that you don't put the perpetrator's face everywhere. I want to see it in newspapers, flyers, grocery stores, the post office, Most wanted poster. Yeah, you can do a most wanted poster without a name. Put him up there. Porch guy, wanted in the Nancy Guthrie abduction. Walmart bag. Let me make sure I don't miss this question. Oh, okay. Good, I didn't miss that one. Thank you, Sergeant. Immortal Sergeant. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying that they've got to focus on porch guy, but their main avenue to solving this case, if those first two notes are real, which makes a lot of sense now, right? The Bureau talked about the uniqueness of what was said about a floodlight and a watch, and then something else I think they bring up. And TMZ says there's a lot in there that's very specific that only the perpetrator could know. You look at all of that, everyone, you look at all of that. That's the key. That's the key. I would hire the absolute most professional and experienced individuals when it comes to breaking these types of cyber cases that there are in the world. I would go privately. Definitely use the cyber folks at the Bureau because they're very good at as well. And they work on these cases every day and they're pigeonholed and they're good. But I would be reaching out to all these cyber companies, whoever put up that email system at each of the places, TMZ's email, the two outlets, the local Tucson outlets to their emails. Who created that system? Who created the program? How come they can't peel back the layers and figure out who sent those two notes? That is the key to the crime, period. Keep working on the DNA. Get porch guy's face out there. Keep following up on your leads because one of those 30,000 in that bucket, the one that looks like they don't know what they're talking about, that's saying something weird, there was a guy that I was at Arby's and he through the drive-through window and I could have sworn that was him and he had a ring on. But right now, out of 30,000 leads, maybe that one is number 20,000. It's just going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. But that is the key to the case. Mark my words, that's the key. I want to talk a little bit about this guy. I posted this on X right when it happened. This guy, he was arrested. I want to give you the details of this thing. Pima County, which was the reason I posted it, because it's Pima County. He was a Pima County Sheriff's officer, 22 years old. He basically, and this happens so often, I'm always featuring these cases of these wackadoodles, wackadoodle officers that actually do this. I want to give you his name, though. Travis Reynolds. Travis Reynolds is the guy's name. This guy arrests a female, and I said this happens all the time. While she's in the back, he wants to sexually have his way with her. He offers to take her to a hotel. He wants to see her breasts, so has her lift her shirt. And by the way, anytime you're in a vehicle and anytime most of these departments have body-worn camera requirements now. It's not really hit the federal stage as much. It's trying to. I know the Bureau is still working on implementing it. But it protects everyone involved. All those police brutality cases don't exist because you can't just throw out crap that never occurred. And by the same token, arrestees are protected with body-worn camera because they could say, look at what he did. Just look on the body-worn camera. So I love body-worn cameras for this reason. They shouldn't be on all the time, by the way, at all. They should only be on when you're dealing with the public, and that's it. Bad guys, public, people. Certainly body-worn cameras should not be on when you're, calling to check up on your kids and everything else. That they have to be turned off, and that's the general policy. But nevertheless, people who want these officers to have them on all the time, that's ridiculous. It's a full invasion of privacy. But certainly when they're dealing with the public, so the public can't come out and say, oh, he came out and he strong-armed me and he threatened me and he extorted me. All that goes away with body-worn camera. Nevertheless, some of these allegations that were made were actually caught on camera. In other words, the supporting part of it. So obviously she makes a complaint. There's a complaint out all about this, a criminal complaint. So there's 3 ways to charge. There's by indictment, criminal complaint, criminal information. I've kind of been over this, so I'll just say it quickly. Criminal information is when basically your attorneys are kind of on board. In other words, you're going to get charged. You're a high-profile person, or you're somebody that the police believe isn't a danger to the community. You speak to them. They get an attorney. The attorneys work it out, and then an information, which basically is the charging instrument. They charge, and that's when the person's going to plead guilty and all of that. That's criminal information. The number one way in reactive crimes is called reactive crimes, where you're reacting to a crime as opposed to anticipating a crime. Those are proactive crimes, like when we're out and we're doing, for instance, you see a group of gangbangers. You proactively approach. You proactively try to prevent arrest or try to prevent crime. That's the other way. But these are reactive crimes. So that's done by a criminal complaint. That's where literally the officer is talking to this woman and they write up the complaint based on not only her words, but they would have had to come back and look at the body-worn camera the body-worn camera along with the Sally port and any other cameras that might have been around where she put her shirt on. And then they talked to this guy, and this guy said, well, I'm not saying it did happen, and I'm not saying it didn't happen. So he didn't deny it. He didn't even deny it. Of course, they probably, if it was a good investigator, they probably said, I want to talk to you about this. And before you say anything, you may want to look at the video I have. And that's probably when he said, why not? I don't want to deny it and I don't want to undeny it, right? So anyway, bottom line is people are saying, well, Pima County, could he have done this? I say no. I think he's bigger. And I don't think the MO is right for me. I just don't think the MO is right for me. Let me just turn off my Wi-Fi on my phone. I just looked up and saw that somebody said the phone was, or the sound was glitching. Hopefully it's not glitching. It might have glitched for a second because I had an alert come on, and when an alert comes on, it does that again. I bought a Shure microphone. It works so bad. I'm going to get a more expensive microphone, apparently, that will work better, that will sort of be detached in terms of not being able to pick up and then that way I can bring up more pictures and video and things, and it won't be distracting to everybody. I've even heard that when I put my glasses down, you guys can hear it. This is a great microphone on this laptop. That's why I bought it. It's kind of the best of the best for visual, but I know it can be distracting. If any other noise comes in, it cuts off. But anyway, I don't think this guy is Porch Guy. That I have information about. And I'll tell you why. Look, the MO is so different. To me, this isn't a guy that's going to seek an 84-year-old woman and then, as we know now, do ransom notes and all of this. He just, to me, strikes me as an idiot officer with serious sexual problems that when there's a target of opportunity in the back of his squad car and he thinks he's not going to get caught, tries to take advantage of an opportunity. That's what this screams to me. He also seems way too big. I saw a report that he was 6'6", but I can't verify that. I don't think he is. But when I saw him next to the other officers, he's noticeably taller. Noticeably taller. If anybody in chat has discovered his height, because it's probably out there on social media, let me know. So anyway, he was arrested up in Tucson um, for this crime. They had venue apparently, but essentially he's a Pima County Sheriff's officer, or I should say was. He was fired right after Chief Nanos found out about this. So to Chief Nanos' credit, he wasn't put on paid admin leave like they normally do. He just fired him. Although that does tell me, right? Chief Nanos is, you know, still, he should have been. I say to his credit, because if there's video evidence of this, if there's audio evidence of this that support this woman's allegations, which are just sick, basically he just, I mean, they vape together, this is so not unusual though. Police officers, some of them, I don't know his background. He was 22 and he was already an officer, but most officers, they have no degrees. They come in right after high school. They apply for these jobs at these local small departments. They get on and it's a place where they have a lot of power for the first time. And I've always said that's why there's a lot of issues with at local departments, more police brutality issues and issues like this. These body-worn cameras are ferreting out a lot of it. I post probably at least once a month. I look at them all the time, but I don't want to inundate my feed just with bad police officers, because 90+% of officers are great. But you have these people like this guy who gets in a position of power and tries to use that. My question is, how many other women has he tried to extort that he's arrested? How many other prostitutes or things like that he's arrested? People that he thinks aren't going to be believable. Shut off that body-worn camera. You just, say paused for admin or pause to go eat. You pick up somebody and you take advantage. That's what I want to see this department look into. Pima County, look into with this guy. So I don't think the modus operandi is right at all. I don't think the target is right at all. I think this is one of these, like many of we see, that is, just a sicko that got in a position of power. Unlike the sicko on the porch that seemingly, absolutely knows and hates the Guthries and wants to cause the optimum amount of pain he can to this family by taking Nancy forcefully, by not coming forward with where she is, having them have that concern, at least it could be for the rest of their lives if this isn't solved. I do think it'll be solved, but the way it's going to be solved are those notes. Okay, Jen, what are your thoughts on those 2 ransom letters Savannah revealed? I believe they gave material facts like the mom begging for mercy and taken without the shoes on. So, and hi, DeBlungo, and thank you so much. Yeah, we were just talking about that. It's possible that could be in there, but I talked about how yesterday as caretakers, when you have somebody that you're caretaking for, and I showed some pictures of Nancy, and I believe her to be a very fastidious person. In other words, a person who dressed to the nines, who had her hair done, who that image was very important to her. Her house was always perfect, everything in its spot, made military style her bed every day. She just is, the type that if she's going to cook, she'll cook and then she cleans up after it, not after the meal, not after everything's done. She cooks up as she goes. She puts everything away. This is a fastidious woman, I believe, from everything we know, everything we've seen. And again, I brought up that at night I do a lot of shorts about Nancy and about the Savannahs and things I've found from clear back, or the team has found clear back from when they were little, sitting there with those vines, the same vines that were pulled. That was my favorite one, showing that clip of all that was available for anybody who wanted to do this to see, was out there and has been out there. on between Instagram and Facebook and the NBC show, all their coverage. There, you intimately knew this family, up in including her own bed. Very intimate details. So I don't think necessarily it was in the note. It wouldn't surprise me if one of the notes said she's wearing her pajamas and no shoes. I agree with you. Wouldn't doubt that, but I think Annie would have known that anyway. I think she likely knew what pajamas she had and didn't have and probably looked for those, because as an officer, that's what I'm asking. Is there anything you notice that's missing? And I bet you Annie, being the caretaker, going to her house again, Savannah talks about in this interview that but for Annie and Tommy, she calls him Tommy, but for Annie and Tommy, she couldn't have even stayed in that house. She could barely walk to the mailbox. She tried to and would do it on an occasion. That's the furthest she could walk, would be to her mailbox, because her back was in such excruciating pain. So these are details that are really important to understand the intimacy with which Annie and Tommy, I'll call him Tommy because that apparently is what he goes by now we know that Annie and Tommy knew her and would have been there at nights and there in the morning when she woke up in her gown and would have said, oh my gosh, her nighty's gone. I also picture her shoes just being, these houses that were built in the 70s. She bought this in 1975. I believe this, they are these either one door and you pull it open and you walk into that closet, or do you remember the wooden ones? They're like slider doors and you slide to this side and slide to the other side. That's what I'm picturing in this room. And that she would have had her shoes all laid out. And because of her frailty, because of her back being so bad, I have no doubt that Annie and Tommy assisted her with putting on shoes at one point or another. Let me get your shoes, Mom. Which ones do you want me to wear? Or which one do you want to wear? Because Savannah talked about her back and the pain of her back. There's nothing more painful, and I'm sure many of you have had these issues. I had 1996. I was on the SWAT team, and we were doing, it was 96. We were doing a lot of operation training where we were like going up into roofs or ceilings, and you had to pull yourself up and back down. And back then, the amount of equipment I wore was about 60 pounds. I weighed still probably about the same. I was more muscular though, way more muscular. Still 110, 112 maybe. But back then, again, I was way more muscular. So anyway, and we were doing all this, and there was this hatch, and you had to jump up and grab, and then kind of, for me, because I'm small, I had to sort of invert my body, and I herniated a disc. It was so bad. I ended up at the hospital, and they literally injected me with some painkiller back in there. They didn't do a epidural. They literally gave me pain medicine right in there. I don't know what it was. I was out for about 2 weeks. Like I could not move. I was in so much pain right after the herniation. Well, herniations heal. It just means your disc, not bulge, that's different. It means it actually herniates out, but it doesn't mean the whole disc herniates out. Many of us have several herniated discs. I have 4 herniated discs, and I play tennis and do everything just fine. I didn't have surgery. We talked about it. There's no way I ever get surgery unless it's an absolute necessity. Like I had to have surgery for my left arm because I couldn't function it when I herniated my disc in my neck. That was terrible. But anyway, back to normal, went back on SWAT. Everything was great. But in this case, all I'm trying to say is for anybody who's had a herniated, bulged, otherwise issue with their back, it is excruciating And I can't imagine at 84 with her having all these problems. In fact, I'm thinking, oh God, what's it going to be like when I'm 84? I mean, I have very few problems with all of that, but the pain is excruciating. And the worst part about it is when you have to bend over, like to put on your shoes. That's the part you can't do anymore. You can't touch your toes right. You can't bend over. This is all to say that, yes, I do believe it could have been mentioned in the note. Would that surprise me at all? No, because the kidnappers would want to be saying, see, she was in her pajamas and she had no shoes, so that the family could go back and say, oh my gosh, she doesn't have one pair of shoe missing and her pajamas are missing. So great question. And yes, I think it's two-pronged. Yes, very likely in the note, and even more likely that Annie and Tommy know exactly what shoes she did and did not have, and that she didn't have any on, and what pajamas were missing. It's the notes now. I'm just going to key on the notes. I don't think it's this guy. Really don't. Wrong MO. He's a guy that is a victim of opportunity type of guy, and a sicko who got into a position of authority. I wonder if Brian Koberger, if he would have actually been hired, he wasn't hired, thankfully, in the police department. I wonder if he would have started out like that. The whole problem is that Brian Koberger was evil. I think would have been a serial. Many people think that. Nevertheless, everyone, thanks for being here on your Saturday morning. I will see you tomorrow morning at 8:30. I'm going to see what news break, what comes up. Monday, just to give you the forecast, Monday we have Cheryl McCollum. She will be coming to talk with me about the new revelations from Savannah Guthrie, and she went out there. So she has some very interesting things, I think, to share with us about that. Well, also on Wednesday, I have the mother of DNA with genetic genealogy, the one who was the first to come up with it. Again, she has more degrees with long names, and I'm going to have her talk about that and background. I think it's nuclear physics, something like that. Anyway, she's the one that came up with the whole thing. She was the one that did the first case. She's still working, still has her company that does this, but we're getting her out of the laboratory and into our space. That's Wednesday. Her name is Fitzpatrick, Dr. Fitzpatrick, Colleen Fitzpatrick. So I'm very excited to have her on. That's going to be Wednesday morning at 10, because she is California time. So we're going to do 10 on Wednesday. I think I've already put that alert out, so everybody should have that to plan and prepare. Other than that, we're going to go with 8:30. Tuesday, I'm going to try to get on one of my favorite search and rescue guys to just ask what he would be doing. I'm also going to be looking at getting a representative from possibly EcuSearch, but hopefully from the Cajun Navy to come up with us. I think that would be very good, and maybe even Madre Buscadoras. I would love to talk to one of these ladies. So that's kind of what we have. I wanted to let everybody know. And again, I want to thank, let me see if I can get this to move up. Everybody who's a member, all the mods, everybody who does such a great job behind the scenes, making this show successful, everybody who contributes. Thank you so much, because you're the ones that make it happen. As a way to give back, as soon as there's an arrest, Nancy doesn't need to be found, but as soon as there's an arrest in this case, I have a little package that I'm going to put together of FBI memorabilia. This is something you can't get anywhere other than that I've gotten from headquarters or the offices I've worked at. Something to just pass along. We're going to do to anybody who is a $3.99 member. You're going to get this, and it's going to just be a little package regarding the Bureau, and it's just kind of a way to give back. So you'll be randomly drawn, and I think it'll be great. It'll be a great way to give a little something back to a very special channel member. So thank you all again for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow morning. And let's hope that there's a break in this case soon.